Look, will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.
So, I know when the three of us first started this podcast, I think a lot of people had an inkling or an assumption that it was going to be about nutrition, health, fitness, workouts, and I think we've completely engrossed ourselves in the opposite of topics, and we've heavily divested ourselves into the mental health aspect as well as the lack of mental fortitude that's going on between men nowadays. I think that there is a symbiotic and cohesive relationship between the physical body and the mental psyche, and they both have to be in complete alignment with one another in order for somebody to actually heal. Personally, for me, I don't think that an individual who's sitting home ruminating in this ceaseless loop of negative thoughts is going to be able to heal themselves. I think you have to heal the body in order to eventually heal the mind. I think that the body comes first and the mind comes second. And I also believe that in order for that to happen, that we as individuals have to establish a certain level of physical foundation in order for that to trickle down into the mental psyche. So you have helped not only just Mike, but thousands of people in your lifetime now of actually coaching. And I guess what I kind of want to get into right away is, when you were a child, was this where you wound up seeing yourself in? Was this the path and the course and the action that you eventually wanted to get into? Was this always your driving factor to be in servitude, like you and I constantly say? And was it always in the physical space?
Probably not until I was much older did I ever foresee it being like a training or like a one-on-one personal, anything to do with fitness. I think I would say when I was younger, I was very much into sports, and if I could have chose anything, I would have just been a professional athlete.
In what?
Probably in basketball, followed by maybe football or baseball.
Okay.
But I would have definitely, if I had the, I don't know, size and strength and all the capabilities for it, I would have played professional sports, and I don't think I would have been in a position of like serving in the way that I am now from a physical standpoint. I don't think when I was younger that I really had any idea what I wanted to do, and I would say even up until college I still had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I would say right now I still have no idea what I want to do with my life. I think I basically had to choose something, and in like growing up I was again an athlete, and I had like some minor injuries and things like that. And then when it came down to choosing something, I was like, all right, what would be like maybe related to athletics, but not quite like who's around athletes, like, oh, trainers and physical therapists and the athletic trainer and shit like that. So I said, all right, that would be cool. Like, I'll be the person that helps athletes. And that almost sounds just as good to me now, thinking about it, like to be LeBron James's right-hand man that trains him and gives him like the physical therapies that he needs and directs him in the right ways and works on his nutrition and shit like that. Sounds almost just as cool to me now about, compared to like playing the sport itself. But no, I kind of stumbled on it one step after another type deal. Granted, like rewind, my dad was a bodybuilder when I was younger, so I was always around the gym culture a little bit. Like I can probably remember back to being maybe like 10 years old, going with him to the gym sometimes.
Your dad's like a specimen of a human
He's a big
being.
dude.
For those that don't know, like this dude is what you want to look like at his age, and he walks in the gym still at how old?
Yeah, he's 60,
and
6 now, 7.
You could feel him in the gym, bro.
Dude,
he could like shake your hand and snap his fingers while shaking your
so
hands.
I was training Taylor and Kate in boxing in his backyard. First time I ever met his father. First of all, I stand at a whopping 5'5", maybe 5'6" on a good day. Okay, bro. I'm staring right at this dude's belly button. And, bro, he's got a 6-pack, and I'm just looking up in amazement at this dude. When we shook hands, I could have fit 3 of my hands in one of his palms. It was wild. Do you like growing up in that atmosphere, that bodybuilding atmosphere, is that maybe one of the contributing factors that wound up pushing you into this fitness element? And especially now being in the position that you are coaching in a bodybuilding type format, do you think that having your father kind of as that catalyst is what projected you forward?
Yeah, I think that I found a love of fitness through him, and I think that, like, we'll probably touch on this in fatherhood episode and things like that, but he just did stuff. He didn't push anything on me. He never said, like, I know that I had other friends' dads that were like, he makes me do push-ups when I come home from practice and this and that. Like, my dad never pushed me one time to do something that I didn't want to do. He would support me, and he would come out and hit balls off the tee with me, or have a catch with me, or lift with me, or train me, or any of that stuff. But he never pushed anything on me. So I think I had a very organic, like, I want to be like dad kind of
I love that
leeway into fitness. He's this big, strong guy. And obviously, even when you're a kid, you like, everything's exaggerated even more. So he was like the tallest dad out of anybody's dads. And he was bigger too. So I remember always just thinking, like, I have this massive guy as a dad, you know, and like, I want to just like follow in his footsteps. He's the kind of guy that would go on vacation, but he'd be at the gym at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. before everyone else got up to like start his day like that. So for him, that was just like an important part of his I don't know, mental well-being, or like it had been a part of his life for a long time. And it was something for me that I found like honorable for some reason, just the discipline. And he was like a healthy eater for a long time. And so I think it exposed me to a lot as a kid, more so than somebody whose dad like worked in an office and maybe like liked sports but wasn't really into fitness or anything like that. So I think I had a little bit of a different connection of fitness and I guess bodybuilding in particular,
100%.
and just trying to get big and strong was like the way that I viewed bodybuilding. I never was really introduced into, because I know that you bodybuilded for a little bit,
long time, yeah,
for a while, and you, I think, got to firsthand see some of like the darker sides of that world.
Yeah, that's all I saw in it. Yeah,
right. So I actually had the opposite experience where I only knew my dad, I knew Arnold, I knew bodybuilders like through like motivational videos and things like that. It was always very, very positive, and
How
they were
old
always.
do you think you were when you first noticed, like, I want to be like my dad? Like, he's special. Because I think the fit father is the most not underappreciated, but I guess I would say underappreciated. Like, people don't really realize how good they had it. You know what I mean? And it's very rare that it happens. So like hearing that someone, that's kind of what I want to project onto my kids. Like,
I don't think I can remember back to not looking at him on a pedestal and like, yeah.
He was the biggest, the strongest, that constant alpha mentality.
And I think like growing up, like as far as father-son goes, like the son keeps getting older, and like there's like a little bit of headbutting that goes on, like from a pecking order maybe type standpoint. But I always definitely I didn't want to mess with him. Like as angry as I might have got at him at certain points, like I was definitely scared of him, and not because he ever hit me or beat me or anything, but it was like a respect on a very deep level where I'm like, you just don't poke that beast. Yeah. Like,
did you notice growing up that other people acted differently around your family when you were out because of your father's stature compared to others?
I probably
the friend that had the 5'8", 70-pound overweight dad drinking Budweisers on a lawn chair every day. Did your friends treat that father differently than they
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was a little probably too young to even notice as much of how not regular I had it, or like how uncommon it was to have a father figure like with that level of physicality than like who everyone else's dads were. I wasn't even aware probably. I probably took note of his height and his muscles and not that much else. Like I just assumed like, everyone had viewed their father like this strong figure and whatnot. But he definitely was like, had a little bit of like a comical, like the way that other people would approach him. Like most definitely if you were walking out somewhere like, and he had a tank top on or something like that, he would get like passerby comments. And I don't necessarily know anybody really acted differently. And I think that's a bit due in part to his like the nature that he is as a person, like his personality. He's very like soft-spoken and kind of calm and very friendly, and he just has like a big network. He's kind of like a mayor type figure in a lot of ways. So I think a lot of people just like treated him fairly normally, and like would make comments maybe about his stature, and kind of the same way as like I'm sure you've both gotten when you're into fitness and when you're into health a little bit. When you do any kind of normie type things, then normies are like, you eat that, or like you drink that, or you don't do this stuff right, or like they think you're just like this another creature almost, kind of type of thing, in a funny way, in like a lighthearted way. But it was more of that than anything else, like just lighthearted. Like they knew he was a little bit different, but it was still, he was like just as friendly as all the other fathers that were drinking beers were together and whatnot.
So do you think that having him as present as he was also another driving factor into getting you into this place where you're now at in life, in this physical kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just like this physical, I guess, space where you're constantly being able to help others and impose a healthy lifestyle onto them, since that was kind of imposed onto you without it actually being imposed onto you by him as a child.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
He, like I said, I can't remember a time where I didn't really want to be like him. So he gave me my segue into learning how to train, like when I was a lot younger, learning how to lift weights, and he's very like non-conformative in a lot of ways too, or very open to being different, even in terms of like his fashion sense and just the decisions that he makes. He doesn't really care if it fits the norm of what everyone else is doing. So I think that really like left an imprint on my personality in a lot of ways. So he kind of segued me into fitness, and then I can't really remember any sort of time where he pushed me or even gently nudged me towards being into a physical field or thinking about training people or anything like that. That was just what he did. And I think I took fitness as something that was mine, like for me, not really for anyone else. It was like I wanted to get bigger and stronger and experiment on myself, and I very much like having something to work on. So like fitness is a never-ending way to work on yourself, basically. So in terms of career-wise, though, I just think that happened pretty naturally, like organically.
So you made a comment that, you didn't know what you wanted to do when you got into college, and right now you still don't know what it is that you kind of want to do, but are you happy with what you're doing now? Do you feel fulfilled in a sense where you get to wake up every day and have purpose of impacting people's lives in a positive nature and way? Because even though you still say, I don't know what I want to do, now that you and I have been able to communicate the way that we have, and we say this word servitude back and forth every time, do you feel that you have kind of reached not your maximum fulfillment, but an ability to feel fulfilled, that maybe you are doing exactly what you want to do? Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't choose probably anything else right now for like a day-to-day for work. I wouldn't choose anything else. It is very fulfilling. The previous job that I had that I've mentioned before is that I did the cryotherapy.
Yeah. How did you get into that, and what made you actually want to start that? Of all things.
So I didn't start it. It was my sister and my dad that started it. Okay. And they started it because my sister wanted to be an entrepreneur and she wanted to open a business. And my dad, I think, as far as I know, was the one that really stumbled on cryotherapy, like accidentally, as just a therapy for himself. And so they decided to do it. I was actually still in school at the time. I was finishing. So I was in my final year of college, and probably maybe 2 months or so before I finished and graduated, which I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to graduate with basically a pre-physical therapy degree where I'd have to go back to school and get a doctorate to be a physical therapist, right, which I didn't want to do. I didn't even want to be in school by probably like the second or the third year. So I actually went to school to be an athletic trainer at first, and they gave me the kind of like the course workload, and it had like a lot of volunteer hours in the school facility to treat the school athletes. And then on top of that was like a full course load. And then I was trying to work part-time to have some money, and I wanted to like have fun. Obviously I went to college in the first place to just try to have fun more so than learn anything. Cause I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So they started it on their own, and I finished school and came home. And the next day I started working with them basically to help them. So it wasn't even really like, oh, I'm going to pivot. This is perfect. I'm going to pivot my career here now. And this is a great business that's in alignment with my studies. It was just like they had an idea and they needed some help with it. And I knew something about the body, like a little bit. I had a little bit of studies on it. So it was somewhat in alignment. But I think from there, from my first day there, I took it upon myself to like be a third party researcher on all the holistic therapies that they were using and that other people were using. And I tried to just really immerse myself in like this new kind of field that I was in, which was really, really nice because we started getting like athletes, UFC fighters and NFL players and things that would come and use the therapy. So accidentally I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I wanted to be an athlete. I couldn't. And I figured that maybe I'd be an athletic trainer, like a physical therapist, and I'd help athletes. And I realized that was going to be really hard to do, because to be a physical therapist at that level, there's only a few. Like there's like 30 teams in each sport. So there's really like 30 to 60 therapists that get roles like in the roles that I wanted to be. And most of the other physical therapists are like, no, you just work in a clinic, you treat older people and it's like regular stuff. Like not, it's not going to be an athletic population. So I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to be a physical therapist either. Like this, I just had to pick something, and that seemed like it was close. And then doing the cryotherapy and the holistic therapies was like, oh, accidentally, this is perfect. Now I get to see athletes and I get to feel like I'm doing something for them. And I felt definitely fulfilled doing that. And
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Only because being away with you and seeing how you are with reading as much as you do you think that being in the cryotherapy industry, when you were researching all of these holistic medicines and different types of therapeutical treatments, is that where this initiative for you to start really kind of investing your time and your interest into studying came from? Were you a big studier before then? And I'm asking that only because I got to witness you in so many different elements, in so many different stores, researching so many different things. So I'm interested to know if you being in that cryotherapy space is what put you on the trajectory to having that kind of research mind and acumen that you developed.
It's a good question. It wasn't particularly that, because as far back as I can remember, I had that same personality trait where I was very skeptical about anything. So if you said something, I would just look it up. Like I would read on it, and I'd try to kind of like find what the real truth was. So I think that was always there anyway. And then I spoke a little bit about my dad. My mom was a school teacher. She was a middle school science teacher, basically. So she was, and my dad was really like kind of like the opposite as far as school goes. He went to a community college, and it was not in the forefront of his life to be like very educated and to care a lot about school. So as far as parental voices went, it was like my mom was the one that I had to make proud in school, and I had to be like a good student. And she was a teacher, so like in terms of the way that you act in school and like your respectfulness to staff and things like that, I felt like I had a little bit of a different sense in that than some of my friends that were like screw around kind of type of guys, which I was in the friend group, and I would screw around as much as I could too, but I felt like there was a little bit of a different level of like honor or respect for the faculty and the staff. But from a school standpoint, from like a studying standpoint and stuff like that, I think that would maybe come from my mom's side, if anything, where I had this like trait about me where I just wanted to like look stuff up and research stuff and try to be right about things a lot, honestly. Like, so
you're in this cryotherapy field, and you're doing all these holistic therapeutics. You're doing all your research. You're dealing with MMA guys, athletes, so on and so forth. And then you kind of, I guess, explode into a multiple different variation of avenues, because I kind of want to touch on is not only did you do the cryotherapy, which is freezing, by the way, but then you also went into these cold plunges. And I know that you studied a variation of different breathing exercises and different specialists in that field. So were you doing that at the same time that you were doing cryotherapy? Did the cryotherapy wind up kind of steering you into the direction of doing that cold plunge therapy?
So if you ever heard people say like biohacking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So and if you haven't heard of it, it would basically mean that you try to like hack your biology. So you try to do little tips and tricks and swaps and therapies and whatever. And these things are supposed to optimize you, so give you more energy, or things that would help you sleep better, things that would help you lose weight, all these different ways that we can like hack our physiology to be better. And I think once I kind of started getting in these more niche circles of like higher level performing athletes, they try a lot of stuff because I think you have nothing to lose sometimes. So they're trying to get any edge that they can get, and they're doing things differently, and they're putting money into things differently than like a normal person would. So I think that I started getting little like droplets of, oh, this guy does that, and this guy does that, and this guy has a sports psychologist, and this guy has a breath coach, and this guy has like, you know, like so on and so forth with anything that you can think of. And the things that they would try are very different. So I think that's really what set me down the road of, I don't know that I would have really knew very much about breath work or why it would have been important before that. But then to me, it was kind of delivered as, and really I got into breath work through Wim Hof. And that was delivered to me as, this is a biohack that you can never get sick. So he can like defeat viruses. They injected him, and I don't know. I want to just disclaim, I don't know. I haven't like thoroughly read any of this research that he's put out, or because Wim Hof has done a lot of science and collaborations and things like that. I haven't delved that deep into it.
I know a lot of listeners are going to be, because I'm also a virgin on understanding who Wim Hof is. I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, so best way I would describe him would be like, he's just like the forefront, the mascot for like cold exposure, because he was setting all these records for long cold exposures, like hour-long ice baths, and like swims under frozen lakes, and like tundra marathons, and like all these like really crazy feats of
people get frostbite or die.
Correct. So even sometimes where he's getting frostbite, like even the time that he told us the story about swimming under the ice, it was like the longest like underwater swim in a certain temperature or something like that. He said his corneas froze underneath, so he actually he broke the record more so because he actually kept swimming past where he was supposed to go because he froze his corneas. And then like there was another story when he did the marathon that he had like a really bad frostbitten foot, and the like medical staff was like, this is a serious, you need an amputation. And then he's this very lackadaisy, nonchalant guy, and he's like, no, I'll be fine, you know, like, and through his breath work and whatever, his
and
foot
you
is
studied
fine.
Directly under this guy?
I did seminars directly with him, yeah. And I think as far as studying goes, he was kind of like rewriting science in some ways for what they thought was possible, and mechanisms that they thought were not under control that he was showing that maybe was under control. And for him, the breath was the key to like unlocking your physiology, and then the ice was like your test to see how good you are at it. Kind of like that would be my takeaway from him. He might explain it a little bit differently, but the breath and the ice was really interesting to me. But the ice was really interesting to me at first, and the breath was really a way to get better at it almost.
Now, are these still practices that you wind up using to this day, or as the years have progressed and you've obviously done a lot more studying and you've been able to research a lot more, I guess, different people within the same industry and sector, have you stayed consistent with reviewing almost like one kind of guy at the tip of the forefront, or have you been able to pick and choose and micro pick from multiple different people and kind of create your own mechanisms to utilize?
That is pretty much how I form my opinion on everything. Is like I find the first guy that really breaks my mind open a little bit, and then I dive as deeply into them as I can, and that will inherently lead you to like a few other people who disagree with him or have a slight other way of doing things, or they say that he stole this from someone else and this guy's the original teacher, and here's where things got lost in translation. So from the breathwork standpoint, that's exactly how it happened. It was like Wim Hof was my entryway into breathwork, and then I realized that breathwork has been around for a really long time, and lots of ancient cultures used breathwork ceremonially and spiritually and physically and so
meditatively,
exactly,
and
so
on and
you know,
so
it wasn't
forth.
just this physical like thing that helps you get better at ice, or this biohacky thing that helps you, I don't know, sleep better at night or have more energy throughout the day. It was like, I mean, I'm I don't have books in front of me and things to reference, but a lot of, I'm sure, older societies would say breath was like your life force, more or less.
Yeah.
So it was really, really deeply tied into spirituality, versus now it's like, oh no, we just exchange gas. Like we need oxygen and we dump CO2. And so like we have to breathe, which
Right.
I mean, it's true, but it's very
more to that.
reductionist. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you switch from that whole mentality that you have on the healing and the breath work into the physical aspect of the gym training?
So I took a really awesome course in my senior year of college, which was an exercise science course, which is like the science of exercise, basically, if you break it down.
Exercise as far as like physically doing the workout, or how it impacts the body?
Both.
Oh shit. Okay.
Both, yeah, which was really cool to me because I learned everything from my dad, and he grew up during Arnold era
Arnold,
where they
Dorian
just
Yates,
broed everything,
yeah.
kind of, you know, like they just benched like a bunch of times during the
Yeah,
week, and
yeah. Worked out for 7 hours.
it was like
a
hard
day.
work. It
Yeah.
wasn't really smart work. It was kind of like they had like this encyclopedia of movements that made sense, and those were what you did,
Old
and you
school
just
push-pull
did them like
days
as much
and
as you
shit
can
like
kind of
that,
handle.
yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't really very there was nothing about what was really the best way. It was kind of just like who looked the best. Like Arnold looked the best, but he probably had better genetics than most of the other guys. And they weren't really doing that much stuff different. They were all just like lifting as hard as they could and having group sessions where they just hammered everything. And some guys got luckier than other guys. And then when I took this exercise science course, they like attempted to break a lot of that stuff down into why would this grip be better than that grip, and how is recovery impacted, and how do rest periods like impact growth. And it really started breaking things down on like a much deeper level. And a lot of those things I'd kind of like tell my dad, and he'd be like, oh, that's interesting, I didn't know that. And in my head I'm like, oh, I thought you knew everything.
Yeah, right.
I thought like all this stuff was really like accepted and that I'm just learning this now, but it's not. There's like people do experiments and they figure out which exercise works better or which protocol works better, and we constantly update our ideas on like why things are working the way that they do. Or
Do you see yourself kind of forever just evolving?
yeah, that's why I think when I answered the question of I don't know what I would want to do, I can't say that I've ever really looked at something beyond like 6 months or a year out as far as what I would be doing.
You're very present, though, and that's something that I've noticed. When you engage in something, you are fully committed to putting your time, effort, and energy into that present moment, into whatever you're doing. But because your knowledge is kind of forever expanding and you're constantly obtaining new information, if you lived in an ideal kind of society in your own mind, like now, at the age that you're at, and you have all this knowledge, like what would be the most ideal thing for you to get involved in now?
Thing like what?
Just a new track of your life. If you were to kind of come up with a dream of a compilation of everything that you know now, everything that you have skills in, every asset that you've been able to obtain mentally, physically, like what is
How
it?
would I use it?
How
or
would
like,
you use it? How would you use it, and how would you implement it if there is a next venture, if you kind of could create something from nothing? And if you don't know, you don't know, because I know, again, you live very presently, so I'm asking you a future-based question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I would try to put it all together in a way that I can deliver it the best, and how can I get this information out? Like most of the time when I try to learn this stuff, it's for me. It's so I can understand why things are working the way that they do, or why. Because I think everyone there's all these schools of thought, and like this guy likes this style of training, and this guy likes this style of training, and this guy likes this style of training. They all have their differences, and they overlap in some ways. I like to understand why certain things that this guy is doing works, and why he's wrong about, or maybe not wrong, but why I think he might be wrong about certain other things, and what this guy has right and what he has wrong. And I like to try to understand why everything works the way that it does. And that's really like for me at the end of the day, because I just like to know, and I like to try to spend my time the best that I can. So if I'm going to go to the gym, then I want to know, like, how do I make this work the best and get me closest to where I want to be the fastest, the easiest, with the least fuck ups along the way. And, you know, like, so I think to take that one step further, after I learn it for myself, usually it's interesting enough for me to say, like, I got to tell my friends about this. And I know my friend like is super into this diet right now, and I just learned this new diet, or this new like supplement or new tweak that he could make, because now I understand what he's doing and why he's doing it and why he thinks that he's going to get what he wants from it, but why he's actually not, because he's missing this piece of it. So going back to your question, I think usually my idea is to try to learn something and then try to share it, and how can I like be of better service with this new information now, because I don't want to just be a trainer. I want to be like the best trainer, and if I'm going to be the best trainer, then I have to know what are the best exercises and how do I cater them to you.
Do you feel that at this moment in time you have been able to maximize, because you're still going to learn and you're still going to evolve, but presently you've maximized being the best version of yourself that you could be? No. Okay.
So like I'm even close.
So I have a question then, like, do you mind if I steer this kind of towards you helping Mike?
Absolutely.
In a sense? So you had made a remark, when you learn something and things along that that line, that you want to be able to share it with the people that you care about. So when Mike wound up coming into your life, and I kind of alluded to this in the last episode, and Mike had remarked on it as well, you physically changed this man's life, which then, correct me if I'm wrong, also helped you change your emotional and your mental factors as well. Yeah. So like for somebody like you, I would say that's a pretty fulfilled kind of job. So I mean, when you are giving this advice or you're doing these things in servitude and it's a selfless act and you're just doing what you actually love, are you aware in that moment in time the impact that you're having on somebody like Mike?
Am I aware of it while it's happening?
Are you aware of the depth?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't cross my mind. I would say like I trained Mike like I would approach like a 75-year-old woman, and I would just say, what are you looking to get out of this? What's your history? What's
crazy, like even though he talks like that, the amount of knowledge that you learn in just a normal conversation. It's not like he has a script and he's selling you on it, or you're just having a normal conversation with like something that randomly comes into your mind during training, and he answers it on the spot, and he doesn't shit on anything he's studied. So he's never, in a year and a half, we lift 5, sometimes 6 times a week, he never says, oh, fuck this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He'll say, oh, well, this guy said this, and I thought that worked, but I found this guy to be better. Pulls up on Instagram, shows it to you, the video, and it's like, oh, wow. So it's never like, he's on riding someone else's wave. It's like he'll take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and the way that he explains it is just, I've never witnessed it.
So I'll also tell you too, like the reason why I feel like a pressure to be really knowledgeable is because it's not always the 75-year-old lady that has no idea what she's doing. Sometimes it's a guy like Mike that's trained for a long time, and they've trained like at a very high level, and I'll meet you where you're at. So if like he's inquisitive about why I'm telling him to do something, then I want to understand for me why I'm having him do something instead of like, just do this is how everyone does it. This is just what we do. Yeah. So I think like he, without knowing it, he also pushes me to be a better trainer and to learn more and to be of better service. And I'm not in the session like I know how meaningful this is to him, so that's why I have to do it. I'm like my role is to be a trainer, and I think it's a disservice to yourself if you're not trying to be the best. And it's like the cliche quote of like, even if you're a janitor, be the best janitor that you can be, because you don't know when you're going to climb the ranks or how that's going to affect you. So I think I take a lot of pride in being a trainer. I think it's very special to have somebody kind of trust you in terms of, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. I think you can get me there. I want your time. I'm gonna pay you for it. I'm gonna ask you questions, and you're gonna like lead. It's in your hands. You're gonna lead me like that. It feels, even saying it right now, it feels like a lot of responsibility for me to take that from somebody. And it's maybe less responsibility if she's 75 and doesn't really have like big goals. But even I approach her now the same way that I would approach Mike. Like, let me find every best physical therapist and what kind of protocol they're giving for a shoulder repair in a 75-year-old woman, or like what other modalities I can kind of show her to get her to where she want to be, because it is to me just as fulfilling to fix her, and maybe even more in some cases, than it is to go back to my original goal of I want to work with athletes and fix like LeBron James's knee. I think I would find probably just as much fulfillment and happiness through helping Granny than helping like LeBron.
Do you ever catch yourself in situations where people, and this question just came to my mind, only because you said, you know, you have Mike who's inquisitive and you want to, not that you want to show him what you know, but you want to be able to basically teach him everything that you've learned in a passionate way. Do people ever come to you and then as you're trying to give them advice, they go, yeah, but I know this, or yeah, but I don't think that's going to work, and then kind of not necessarily shit on the service that you're providing them, but they're not taking what they came to you to give? Do you ever find yourself in situations like that?
I know it's like super cliche that people do that, and people do that. I think I probably took such a step back from trying to push anything on anybody because I had so many I went down so many roads that I thought were like the road, the diet, the way to train. And then I rode them till the fucking wheels fell off. And then I realized like there was some good stuff to it, but it was more or less it was a system that was being sold to me as like a panacea fix of everything. And I think kind of like through that, not that I got less confident in myself. It's more like that bell curve where the more you know, the less that you realize that you know. Mm-hmm. You think you're so smart until you start to learn, and then you start to learn, you think you know everything, but then you learn more, you realize like you actually know nothing, and it goes so much beyond. I think at this point I've taken such a step back from trying to push any ideals on anybody that for the most part when people are seeking my opinion for stuff like that, they generally want to know why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing, because I'm so firm in what I'm doing and I'm so open to what they're doing as well, or to other possibilities, that it's usually approached in a much in a much different way, where it's like, well, here's what I was doing and maybe you can tell me why you wouldn't agree with that so much, versus like, yeah, well, here's what I think. And I'm like, that's okay. You know, I think when you don't push back against ideas and there's not that much conversation of, well, here's what I think, I'm like, that's okay. You then think that. Then if you want to know something different, then we'll chat something different. But otherwise, if you got to figure it out, then why are you asking me?
I'm interested to know. So like my introduction into the fitness field was a very negative and dark one. You know, I found fitness through some really bad channels, and I divested myself into that field for all of the wrong reasons. For the amount of years that you've been in this industry, and obviously when I say industry, that means holistic medicine. I'm sure you've done bodybuilding at one point without the actual competition aspect behind it. Have you noticed any dark sides of the things that you've actually been involved in? Like, has there ever been like a negative attribute to you being in the fitness sector? Or has everything that you've ever done always kind of shed a positive light into your life?
Yeah, I mean, I can't personally think of, besides debating like schools of thought and I'm right and you're wrong kind of type thing, I can't really say that I can think of any negativity that it's brought into my life.
It's all the community that he's in.
Correct.
You know,
correct.
Like we talked about the first episode of like, all right, so I got out of a dark place. What do I do? You know, and we talked a little bit about financial freedom gives you more freedom to do what you want, and then you can start physically, and you find that community. You know, he owns that OG gym that was for me, it was the start of that community. So I feel like that helps. It's not like you're working out at a world's gym.
Because I think for you, Ian, you got so deep in that culture that when you get that deep into any culture, you get like extremists more or less, and whether they mean well or not, I think they get very, very wrapped up in whatever world that it is that they're living in. And then I think like negativity is sometimes inherent when you get that deep into something, or there's just going to be
it's not really a community, it's a
cult.
But
it's a dark cult. And again, like your father was a bodybuilder, but I think with your father being a bodybuilder in the old school era of bodybuilding, where it was just about the love for the gym. And back then, like, yeah, steroids were a thing, but they weren't how they are now. And without that inclusion of social media back in the day, that's what I think has ruined the sport. It's given everyone a falsified ego and this constant need to validate themselves through somebody else's external gratification towards them. So, like, yeah, for me, I was in a cult. I was in a dark, dark, dark cult. I think it's really beautiful for me to be on the outside objectively and hear that somebody who has been in the fitness space literally as long as I have, because you and I are the same age, that has never been able and has had that negative kind of impact on your life in a physicality sense. I think that not that I would change anything that I've been through at all, zero. I'm grateful for all of it. I wanted to know, especially having your father in that industry, what it was like to grow up with your father, which you explained, and see if at any point in time you were actually kind of teetering into this dark valley, or you saw any darkness within it and the fact that there wasn't.
I think that as far as like bodybuilding goes, I would say the darkness is like drug abuse and not just steroids and performance enhancers, but I think that they're like, you open Pandora's box when you get that deep into, you know, if you're gonna take this, then what's wrong with that, and what's wrong with that, and this is already giving me this side effect, so maybe taking this for that isn't that bad. And then I think before you know it, you're around lots of other people who are like heavily medicated in one way or another.
Without a doubt, absolutely.
And so I think that's where you start to get really deep and dark with bodybuilding and powerlifting, and any sort of like gym culture is that far right, where you're not happy with doing things. You're not that you're not happy, but you've decided that you're not going to do this naturally anymore. And
I can attest to the fact that nobody in that industry is a happy individual, no matter what they tell you. Nobody's happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about, because I definitely toy with that idea a lot of like, why train, or why care so much about how strong you are, how big you are, and is it vain, and is it to cover up something else? Because a lot of times that stuff is like, of course, you want to get as big as you can to protect something, or because you felt really small, or I don't know. I think
I think the route that you guys are going is how I thought until you have kids, because the kids change everything. Because then you, like you said, the majority of people are going to be watching this, especially with this men's mental health theme that we have, we're probably 99% of the listeners are going to be at the stage you're talking about right now. And it's, how do I get out of it, or how do I use it in a positive way? So then you have a kid, and this is kind of what I went through, is then you have your kids and you want to get out of this deep, dark depression. And what helped me specifically with you is, so the one mindset, and I've posted this on Instagram before, is, there was, it's hard to fucking talk about. Hopefully get through this without crying like last episode. But, they, not to get into the whole child trafficking, which I don't even want to talk about, but, they had a guy from the cartel that trafficked hundreds of thousands of kids that they interviewed. And they said, what was your main target? And he had 3 targets. The number one target was a fatherless family. The second target was a beta father. You're non-athletic. This guy's a fucking chump dad. And they said, well, who was the worst? Who was the child you never took? And the answer was an alpha father. They didn't even look in that direction of that energy, because they didn't even want to fuck with the dad. So I feel like now you have these kids, you're in this dark place, and this will hopefully help some people on the show of like, well, where do I go? So now you go to the gym and you take that mindset that you had that was negative, and now you start caring about yourself, and you start giving it back to, instead of the darkness and the cult, you use that motivation to make sure your kid never gets there, and it puts you in the gym. And, if you break it down, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, now you start taking the negative and making it into a positive of growing yourself to be the dad that you had growing up in the beginning of this episode. And for all those guys out there, they're like, bro, I just tried killing myself. I just did this. How do I change? And we've been preaching for 3 episodes. You just need to fucking change. You're going to look in the mirror one day and you'll be like, I'm fucking done with this avatar. I want to change. What do I do? Don't worry about your job, and stop the drugs or the drinking. Do a little bit of diet change so you feel better. Get in the gym and start forming yourself for yourself, for your future kids. And I think that helped me the most, because I know that I never was in the bodybuilding, but I know how dark that steroid, and the steroid goes right into the drugs and the drinking, and
Trust me when I tell you,
it all commences together.
I don't think anybody knows how dark that industry is.
Do you think it's spot on to say, like, because I don't really understand why, I mean, I kind of explained, but why the steroids and like this other world of drugs, like why so close? Just because like a gateway theory kind of type thing?
I mean, you experienced it actually in there.
So like I was in there for 7 years. Okay, I was heavily invested into that industry for 7 years. And really what it comes down to is that it is a industry that's filled with a bunch of devoid, dejected human beings that absolutely despise themselves, and they live in a constant world of comparison, and we all know that comparison is the thief of joy. Now, what people do in that industry is think about it this way. You are competing to stand on a stage and be judged by other individuals in comparison to the way that you look. And the only way to be better is to inject yourself with poison. That is the only way to be better in that field. So to go back to your question and answer you, how does one avenue lead to another? When you're picking up a needle and you're looking at it and you're staring at this and you're pacing around your room for 5 minutes and you know that putting this poison in your body is the worst thing that you can do, but all you care about is getting to that point where you're on stage with your fucking lats flexed and you want to be better than the other person, you don't care what it takes to get there. And that mentality of not caring what it takes to get to that stage and to that point where you are now pathetically standing in the background and you can't even make first call outs and you want to sit there and cry on stage, but you can't show emotion because it is a political sport and they will literally take you out of the realm of competing if you show some sort of issue with that. Now that leads to this sense of depression. So now you want to be able to hide this depression, and you want to, I guess, you want to diminish the feelings of feeling a certain way with these other drugs. So a lot of people in that industry are on pills. They're on a bunch of oxys and Xanax and shit like that because they just don't want to deal with the emotion. And they use all this as an excuse to basically want to hide their feelings and completely be even more dejected from how they feel. So what I would do, not to take this episode off of you and onto me for a second, but when I was on thousands, and Mike, as you know what thousands of milligrams of shit probably looks like. So like I was on thousands of milligrams of stuff a week. And I was 235 pounds walking around. I'm 5'5". I was a balloon. But all I cared about was being bigger than the next person. I could never walk into a room and actually love myself. And I gave off that horrible energy. And luckily, it never put me in a situation where I was taking pills or resorting to the next level. But when you are trauma bonding with a bunch of individuals who hate themselves, they all hate themselves, and that is not why bodybuilding was originally founded back in the day. It was a bunch of dudes that were just broing out like your dad. That's what they love to do. Nowadays, because of social media, these 16-year-olds that are fucking injecting 1,000 milligrams of test into their ass because they see C-Bum and all these other guys on Instagram flexing, and that's how they want to look. Bro, this sport has ruined society. Ruined. And it's not even a sport, it's a fucking hobby. Being an athlete like you growing up, baseball, basketball, and what else did you play? Football, okay? All very taxing physical sports. Going to the gym and picking something up and putting it down and then going home and injecting insulin into your stomach and putting a needle in your ass, your shoulders, your traps, your biceps. That's not a sport. That's a fucking hobby. And anyone that calls themselves as a bodybuilder, they need to basically have some falsified sense of importance and put a title to their name so that they feel better about themselves. I digress. That is my rant about the sport. Going back to you now.
No, it's good because I remember I think maybe a couple weeks ago I had shared that I was listening to C-Bum on the Jordan Peterson podcast.
Yes.
And Mike said, I don't know who that is. And you're like, fuck C-Bum.
Okay, so there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that are going to hear fuck C-Bum.
And for me, I'm like, C-Bum is, I'm like, bro, he's the Arnold of our generation. Like, he's the king.
I understand. And the way everyone's entitled to their own opinions about those bodybuilders. But if you go to these bodybuilding shows, and I just want everybody listening to this, I'm looking right at all of you. Anybody listening to this, I want you to think about what you're doing. You are going to bodybuilding shows. You are watching men paint themselves in paint, who sit in a tanning bed for 7 hours a fucking week. Now you're sitting in the crowd screaming at the top of your lungs like you have now seen Jesus Christ reincarnate, and that's who you're fucking screaming for. You're screaming for a person who at the end of the day gives no fuck about you, doesn't care that you exist, and in reality is on social media portraying this image of confidence, but when he goes home and he's got the poison laid out in front of him and he's staring at himself in the mirror about how much he hates himself, that's what you're rooting for. That's what you're going to attend. That's what you're paying for. That's why I don't like Sebum. That's why I don't like any bodybuilder now, because they all, whether they realize it or not, are guilty of grooming. They're guilty of grooming this young culture of adolescents to want to look that way, and it is destroying these kids. It destroyed me. Now, granted, what happened to me, what I went through, the physical and all the other types of assault, I got into doing steroids because of that. Like you said, I just wanted to be big. I wanted to do this. But the more that I was in that sport and I saw this dude's veins and that dude's quads and this dude's back and that dude, and I'm in the back of a supplement store getting a needle in my lat, a needle in my calf, a needle in my quad, and I just didn't care anymore. That's what these kids are doing. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids are doing that because they see people like Sebum doing it and they want to be like that. That's what I have an issue with, because you don't see any professional bodybuilder coming out and saying, hey, don't do this. Don't follow my footsteps. Don't put this in your body. Don't do A, B, and C.
Yeah, you really don't.
Name one. The only one that I see is why are you looking at me like that?
No,
the only one I see is Eddie Abu, who lives in London.
I love him.
Eddie, if you ever see this video, I love you, dog. I love you. He's the only one who says all bodybuilders are fucking idiots. All of them, every single one of them. The needles, to the dieting, to the standing on stage and waiting for the judge to look at you with this little look like, okay, I see you, but doesn't give a fuck about you. And in reality, all the other women who compete in the sport have to wind up sucking all the judges' dicks in order to place in the first call-outs. No, I'm saying it how it is now, because now I'm on a tangent and I'm on a roll, okay? I digressed before, but I'm back at it. I am re-digressing. I'm done. We're going back to you. Now, my question, I'm sorry. My question to you, my question to you is, being in the position that you're in now, what is your take on the importance of physical health and the impact it has on mental health? Because as somebody who, like we've said in the other 3 episodes, you've been through things, but you don't have much of the trauma. What is your take on is it mental first, then physical?
I'm gonna steal someone else's quote, and it says, I don't remember whose it is, but they say, to you, your health doesn't have to be everything, but if you don't have it, you have nothing.
Wow.
So I don't necessarily put one thing in front of the other, because also you can have a great physical body and have no mind, and that's not going to get you very far either.
Right.
I think for me, it's something very tangible that you can latch onto, that you can work on your own time with pretty reliable results as far as the consistency, and you get out what you put in a lot of ways. And there's genetics and there's drugs and there's all these other things that throw wrenches in that. But I think that for me, and I think we almost even joked about this last week, like, what are you going to tell a guy that's depressed and blah, 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 like, just go to the gym? You know, it sounds actually almost like irresponsible advice.
Yes.
Like, you think that that's going to be enough to fix? No, it's not, but
It's a step.
it's something that's so tangible that he can start doing, like, today, tomorrow, and it doesn't pay off right away, but it gives you something that you can work on, and you're working on yourself. So I don't know exactly how to articulate, but for me, that was always something that was very beautiful, that there's a roadmap here that's like reliable. Like, there's a lot of other times in life you can work really hard and not get what you deserve.
And that you have control to.
Right. You have control, which
I think that roadmap comment is very, it's a lot stronger of a statement than just like passing it, because that is the start of it. It's the roadmap of a bunch of things. For me, it was patience. and it was starting to live in the like I just tried killing myself. I'm this, I'm that. Where do I start? How do I just forget? Well, live in the present moment. Well, how the fuck do I do that? When you go to the gym, you're not going to see a fucking stitch of a result for 100 days. But you're going to wake up every day. You're going to do the exact same thing every day. You're not going to see shit day 20, day 40, day 60, day 80, day 99. And then you're going to wake up the 100th day and you go, holy fuck, that's a pec. Yo, that's a bump on my bicep. Oh, my forearms got bigger. I have a calf. And you just subconsciously practice staying in the present moment, which helps with anxiety, it helps with depression, and it's giving you a roadmap of patience, of, okay, if I put this in, I don't need to see an immediate result. So I think that's a super important fucking
even going back to the
aspect of
ice that we spoke about earlier, cold plunges in the crowd and things like that. But I think a lot of times now it's really sold as, do this because you're going to build resilience from it. You're going to do this. You're going to voluntarily do this stressful, painful thing. And what you're going to get from that is you're going to be tougher and you're going to be able to do more harder things along, down the road, because you'll have trained this mental muscle of like doing something you don't want to do. So I think
another thing is
pretty much going back to the gym, it starts to become.
I preach Evan. I say it every day. How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yep.
Again, even if I were to just sign up for the gym, I never fucking went, and I just went there and watched class and heard him on the mic say, how you do anything is how you do everything, changed me enough to be like, motherfucker, this guy's right. And you could just take little things. All you're doing when you're hurt and you're down and you're out and you're ready to live for nothing, there's nothing to live for. You need to build this foundation that you're now going to build this house of happiness. And that foundation is just little pieces of puzzles, one brick at a time. You're not building a whole wall overnight, but as you pick up these little bricks, you're going to slowly build this wall of successful health.
Yeah.
And I think it's the gym is where it's at, and the community change and the patience, and it all comes together.
Yeah. I think there's something for males as well, where we like to relish in the finished product of our work. And I think that it really ties into like a labor kind of thing, but we could go and build a hole. Like we could just dig a hole and we'll be really proud of the hole after it. We'll want to sit in it. We'll want to show people it. So
I dug holes at the beach.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And I'm looking at that 5-foot hole like, yo, look at this hole.
Right.
So I get
and you've been around building houses and things like that. Yeah. So I think I'm speaking for males, and I really think this is a male trait, that we're the people who take nothing and turn it into something. And I think relating it back to the physical body, when you go through that 100 days of being consistent and disciplined and going on the days that you didn't want to go, and you're putting in this hard work, and if you can get to the point where you start to see the results and you start to look in the mirror and you see the things that you've built, I think that is a really, really powerful awakening of I do have control over my life. I have control over my body, and I'm practicing it in the physical way, but now maybe I need to start dieting better, and I need to start taking responsibility for my relationship and my role as a father and this role that I'm in. And I've been wanting to build this part of my life for a long time, whether it's something that you're actually going to build or not. I want to build this business. I want to build this relationship. I think that's maybe just going back to something being tangible. I can do it with my body. Maybe I can do it with my business. Maybe I can go from being in debt, just like I went from being sick to being in health. Maybe I can go from being in debt to being wealthy, or I can go from not having a roof over my head to having a roof over my head.
It's about finding that discipline. And going back to what you said, I think that a lot of men find fulfillment in the struggle.
Yeah.
I think once they realize that they can kind of stay steady in the storm, and that there's something on the outside by following that roadmap that you guys both said, I think that's really what kind of projectiles somebody forward into their journey of actually wanting to heal from the top, which then trickles down all the way to the bottom.
And even you just mentioned healing, I don't think that I ever really, I had friends that worked out that were you need to channel your deepest, darkest, you need to fight demons when you work out. This is the most, and I never looked at it that way, because I didn't really need healing from it. I was kind of doing what you just said, giving myself trials and tribulations to work through, and and finding something that I can progress against that's going to give me challenges. And it was just like, all right, this is an upward sloping road if I take it. And that's like what we need as humans. Like, we need tasks to deal with so we can problem solve and we can build. And
it's funny you say about like the whole fighting demons. Again, like, my darkness was in the bodybuilding. It was in the Muay Thai fights. It was in all these different things where, you know, I'm fighting these demons. And now, honestly, because of you and Ev, and I've said this to Ev, but like, I'll say it to you now, this is the first time in my life in the last year and a half where I have a healthy relationship with the gym, where I'm literally just doing something to feel good, and not where I'm in comparison with anybody, not where I'm looking in the mirror and in comparison with who I was yesterday. I can just go there, work out mindlessly, because I have no control over that workout. You know what I'm saying? And that is such an important thing for me. So, like, not only have you done wonders for Mike and Mike's physical body, which also, again, helped his fucking mental psyche, what you have been able to do for me, even before we connected on like a deeper level of a friendship, you have been able to take something that I have only trauma bonded with my entire life and existence and created this foundation and dynamic where I can truly love something again for the right reasons, dude.
It's a good cult.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
For the right
got
reasons.
this shit tattooed on me.
Bro, like that, I think if you ever in your life had to second guess, am I doing the right thing? I think you can sleep easy knowing the level of impact without actually understanding it firsthand that you've had on a profound amount of people. Like, for me to be able to pick a weight up and not look at myself in the mirror and cry when I go home is huge.
Yeah,
and like, you've done that in so many different ways. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that to you, especially in this episode where it is about your knowledge and what you've been able to accomplish. And I think that's so important for you to know, dude.
I appreciate that. And I think you get old enough and you realize, like, you're not a pro bodybuilder. You're not going to get like rich and have 1 million women from bodybuilding. You're not a pro Muay Thai fighter. You're not going to, or like, you can go pro, but you know, like, are you going to be Conor McGregor? Like, are you going to be getting rewarded on that type of level for this?
Right.
No. So at the end of the day, you got to do this stuff because you enjoy it or because of something that it's doing for you. But if it's coming from a really, really dark place and it's like just trying to get you to not hate yourself, I think you're missing like a very beautiful part of our relationship with our physical body and our life experience, that we get to just do these things. We get to just train these different combat arts and train our body in these different physical ways. And it doesn't have to be like punishment, and it doesn't have to be a golden ticket to get you money or respect or something like that.
Or validation.
Right,
or any
correct.
Of that. Yeah. You
Just
know,
for now, it's something fucking cool that you can do, and we did it. We've done it together now, where you can hold mitts for me, so it's a cool another way that we can connect on things. And you come to the gym now, both you guys all the time, and we're always lifting on our own. So these have always been that way for me, but they're really cool ways that I can connect with people. And it doesn't
I just think you could help the people out there a lot with it, like. People think you need to go to this trainer and work out an hour and a half a day and pay these $1,000 a month for this nutrition coach. And, you know, it started off with me paying him for a couple sessions. Then we just started lifting together. But I remember and you know, I've had a lot of trainers throughout in all different sports, and I always wanted the best. Like when I wanted to get big arms, like I hired a trainer with 23-inch biceps. You know what I mean? Like when I wanted to do speed camp, I had a guy that ran a 4.640 try to teach me how to run. When I played lacrosse, I had a guy that shot 105 miles an hour teach me how to shoot. He was the complete opposite. You know, like here's a kid that's half my size, definitely not as strong as me, but is educated, which checks your ego and re-humbles you. And you're like, all right, let me try this out. And it's just quick answers. I remember the first day he was doing all those like static holds and like jazzercise shit, bro. And I'm like, this is just fucking weird. And then I couldn't walk for 2 days. I'm like, oh, let's go to Crunch or LA Fitness and start doing like some real weights and some machines. And I'm like, just by the way, I want to get into and for the people out there that are like, oh man, what do I do with this nutrition? It's not that hard. you know, and I came from a macro counting background and
bullshit,
protein, carbs, 6 meals a day. He goes, try this. Just keep the same size of the meal, but just make sure, try to hit your weight in protein a day. Just eat the protein first on every meal. Fuck the fat and carbs. Just start with that. Bro, life-changing off the fucking rip. Then I'm like, dude, I really want to train every day, but I can't be in here for an hour. Like, he's like, we're going to start. I don't who started you on the one hard working set, lift, bang, run?
Yeah, Paul Carter.
So he
like
and I came from
Menser and Dorian
15
Yates
sets, 10 to 12 reps a set.
Yeah, bro, trust me, I know.
I looked the best I've looked last summer, probably top 3 summers in 39 years. And we're in and out of the gym in 25 minutes. He does 2 warm-up sets and then 1 real working set to failure. And what failure means is he's spotting you, which is another like genuine support that subconsciously happens. There's a spotter that's like on his phone, and then there's the guy that's just there every fucking set. Like as you're about to put it up, and you always have 2 more reps left. So as you're putting up, you're like, all right, let's go 2 more. And you're like, fuck. And then he does like this basketball rep, which like if you were to take this basketball and drop the ball, it bounces 100%, 80, 60, 40, 20, right. 10. So after you've already failed, so you think you're going to we do like a 4 to 8 rep range. When we get to 8, we up the weight, we go back down to 4. Then you work up to 8. So now when you're done at 4, he's like, all right, now you got 2 more. On that 4th, now that 5th one is like 80%. He's like, all right, you have another one. And then you had like, well, it's not even fucking possible. So now the 6th rep is like 60%. Then it's 20%. And then your 9th rep, you can't even move, and he just racks it for you. That's the only set for the whole fucking muscle part. So like,
wild. Yeah,
dude, and we put on, I mean, the statistic, if I would have weighed myself, I think I lost 35 pounds in 4 months, and I was benching 365 still, deadlifting 5 plates, we were squatting 3 plates, and it's just mind-blowing. Then when it gets boring, he adds the hypertension in. So then you start learning that holding a super negative is the same fucking growth as the positive. And you're like, that doesn't even make any sense. He's like, oh, yes, it does. Pulls up the fucking encyclopedia, shows you. And again, the guy that's talking is fucking 6'2", 265 with a 6-pack. And he's like, yo, try this. And now you try it. Well, I think we do shoulders. We can do shoulders, chest, tries, and some abs to the point where you're swollen as fuck. You can't move and wipe your ass. We're out of there in 40 minutes tops. And you're hurting. Like sometimes we skip the second workout of the week. And it's mind blowing. And it's a and for those out there that are like, hey man, listen, how do we do this? And I really think this episode is a lot more important than you think, because as this podcast grows and the people start reaching out you've already had hundreds of messages. Where do I start? When we say start physically and go to the gym, ask us some questions. It's not going to be this big ass bullshit paragraph it's going to be a simple, quick answer that Taylor could put. And it's just going to help you monitor yourself on that subconscious roadmap as if we were holding your hand, even though we're in New York and you're in Arizona or fucking Spain or Alaska. It's the same thing he did for me. So there's no excuse. There is no, again, we talk about it, it's on you. And that's the fucking hard fact. There is no, oh, I can't do this. I don't know where to start. We're telling you where to start. We're showing you who helped us. And it's on you now to reach out. Otherwise, you're just going to keep procrastinating and dumping your fucking trauma on other people around you, and you're never going to better yourself.
And again, kind of just branching off what Mike just said, this whole podcast was created to help those in need, to help those that are in this just never-ending pool of suffering and pain and grief and damage and wounding and brokenness. That is why the 3 of us got together. And we're not going to sit up here as a high-frequency vibrational individual, 2 very healed individuals, and speak out of our ass without nothing to show for it. This man next to us is the catalyst for how Mike and I got to the point where we are at, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally, about ourselves, and humbled us to understand, you know what, there's more to this than we had originally thought. Yeah. And for somebody like me with the ego that I used to have, that is huge on so many different levels that I can't even begin to put into words and explain. And as we kind of wind this down, I think the most important thing to understand is, and the two guys next to me can confirm or deny, if you're in this constant state of just vacillating these thoughts in your head and you can't get out, when you go and exert yourself physically, think about how you feel afterwards. Think about going for a walk, what that does. Think about riding on a skateboard, going to lift weights, going to play basketball, going to play football, going to play something as simple as manhunt, okay? Any assertion of physical activity, you will feel better for that very brief moment in time than you would sitting there and just overthinking and replaying your thoughts on a loop. Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And there's even the science behind it of like the dopamine release.
Dopamine, endorphins.
I know the cold plunge, they say, I've read a bunch of articles pretty in depth about, like, they compare it to a cocaine high of like that last 30 minutes, but at a 42-degree 3-minute cold plunge, you get the same high for 8 hours. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can compare apples to apples and make the negative into positive and still revisit some of those feelings in a positive way.
100%. And, you know, I would like to say that, and I'm sure, Taylor, if it's a no, it's a no, but anyone who watches this episode, if they just reach out to you and they have a question, I'm sure you'll answer them.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's super important for anybody to know. Mike and I, after our 2 episodes, I can tell you that I got on my personal page 300 plus messages. Mike has gotten an equivalent, if not more. Yeah. Taylor's going to get reached out to after this. We're here to help and to assist.
And I'm excited because I got a lot of, like, I don't understand how Taylor plays into this podcast.
Well,
now you guys really
know.
Understand.
Now you guys get it, and you understand the importance and the fundamental impact that he's had, not only on just us two, but there's 1,000 people that go to this guy's gym. Yeah. There's hundreds of people before that gym that he helped. So he's been doing this for years, and that is how he ties in to Mike and I.
Yeah. And we'll go more in depth into like the actual diets, the actual lifts when we bring on the specialists.
Yes.
You know, for future episodes. But I think this is a nice nutshell, like in a nutshell of what he does and how important he was to us.
Yeah. And just to touch on what you said, like go for a walk, manhunt, whatever. I think that moving, I absolutely agree with you, is like not negotiable. I don't see how you're going to take yourself from the depths of hell and get out of there by sitting. And if you think like doing the work is just going to be closing your eyes and meditating and thinking your way out of it, I don't see it happening. I think you need to be in physical motion. Yeah. And it does not have to be like lifting weights. It does not have to be sport. It can be walking. It can be playing. There's probably 1,000,001 avenues that you can go down as far as a physical outlet goes. But I absolutely think that it would be a non-negotiable for achieving your highest state of self.
And that's how you guys begin this journey, is just move and find a community where you're not bonding with broken individuals and where you can actually have camaraderie amongst individuals that are going to lift you up and be able to be there to help you continuously move rather than stay stagnant.
Yeah. And always try too. Don't not go somewhere. Because I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about your first experience with OG, because I remember like it was yesterday, dude. And not to keep it short-winded, you know, I didn't know Evan was the owner. And I'm calling, and you know, you guys are closed in the afternoon. I'm like, what kind of fucking gym is this? But every time I pass, all I see is these fucking sexy-looking people coming to their cars, and I'm like, I don't understand this gym. And I show up, and he's like, come tomorrow. And I'm like, no, I'll just sign up now. He's like, yeah, no, you're going to come tomorrow and do the class with me. So I'm like, all right, fine. I thought he was like some random manager. We go there, we do the class. He's right next to me, basically holds my hand because I had a little bit of like social anxiety at the time with 48 fucking people working out like animals, the music, the microphone. Then I finish, and he's like, all right, well, now you get 2 weeks for free, you know, whatever, like $20, because I want to make sure that there's an app, and I want to make sure that it's good with your schedule. I don't want to just waste your money if you can't make it. And I'm like, what? I was like, I'll sign up for the month. He's like, no, you have 2 weeks. I want to make sure. And then the guy's like, oh, that's the owner. I'm like, no fucking way, dude. You know, like so sometimes, you know, you really got to take a step back with your ego and give something a chance and just see where it goes, because you're already in a dark place, and the place that you think is going to be good for you is probably in that dark side of where you're still at. So take a leap, something that's going to make you uncomfortable, something that's going to take you out of your element. Just try it. Worst thing is you don't like it and you go back.
It's being taken out of the element. And to kind of answer your question before we wrap it up was I went to OG as a cardio-inducive exercise during my fight camps. So I thought I was in shape.
Yeah.
I thought that
treadmill tells you real quick.
That treadmill, that bike, and all those fucking burpees and shit, they told me otherwise. You know, because hitting the bag and stuff and doing shit like
totally
that.
Different.
Totally different type of workout. So that was my first experience. And I left there, going back to what I said to you before, with a different type of endorphin high.
Yeah.
It's not like I was beating the shit out of the bag or hitting somebody in the face.
That class high lasts for fucking hours.
Yeah, bro. And I didn't leave there on like this rush of, oh, yeah, like, you know, look at me. No, I left there like, damn.
Humbled as a motherfucker,
bro. So my friend Marina brought me there, and shout out to Marina, okay? Marina brought me there, and she's like, just so you know, you're going to die. And I said, bitch, try me.
Yeah.
I died. I died.
Yeah.
We have a really interesting episode coming for you at the end of this week also. And we're going to leave that where it is, but we are going to have a woman on, and we're not going to tell you guys what it's about. But for the female audience and the male audience, you're going to get a real deep dive into the three of our psyche with a particular topic. And for the women that are going to be listening, it's going to be an interesting take for her to kind of explain the same way that Taylor does when he breaks it down for a 5-year-old like Mike and I to understand in the physical sense. It's going to be a very interesting episode. So we hope that after listening to this, you guys kind of will create your foundation to take that first step forward. And like Taylor, thank you for everything.
Yeah, bro,
thanks
good
for
episode.
having me.
Thank you.
Look, will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.